Hello, hello, you crazy kids. This is Pablo back with Meditation Amsterdam. It is Friday today. It's sunny, it's super cool. And I thought I'd make another little video about meditation and how to use our mind correctly. And in today's video, we're going to look about at the mechanism of judgment and projection as something that tends to be the normal way in which we operate our mind until we start to learn a little bit more about the consequences of rolling this way. Much of this is based on this book, actually. I might be doing some more in-depth videos about this. It's called A Course in Miracles. It is written by, I believe, a number of people, or some lady that received some sort of, higher wisdom type revelation or whatever. It is written in fairly religious language, actually. But what it is, whether the author knew about it or not, is a kind of treatise in the mechanism of projection. That the thinking mind engages in. So I thought I'd make this video to make us realize the way this mechanism works, and the way that we can find a way to understand that despite the benefits or the seeming benefits that the mechanism of projection can bring in the short term for a mind that is lazy and uncultivated, that there is a higher way in which we can operate if we are aware of it, and if we are aware of the opportunity cost of being on the judgmental side of things, or the projecting side of things. So in order to do that, I prepared a little table, and the table compares the two ways of using our mind. And I thought I used the example of the recent war with Ukraine and President Putin, and the fact that everybody is absolutely outraged at the actions and the decisions that this man has taken, and the incredible amount of suffering that is being inflicted on the Ukrainian population and many other people because of this. And I've been in conversations with many people about it. And the typical way the conversations go is people will express their outrage and their indignation, and they feel hatred for Putin, right? Like that's the default position. I thought I would challenge that and play the devil's advocate, not so that I'd go out there and defend what Putin is doing, certainly not to say that the position from a logical perspective is not justified, and also not to invite you to try and love Putin, in a new age kind of way. First of all, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, and secondly, because given the stuff that the guy has done, it's too far a jump to say that you could just feel anything but love for the guy. I had a fight with my freaking, the owner of my dry clean around the corner the other day for screwing up a couple of shirts, let alone, a genocidal guy that's starting war all over the place. So this is simply to raise awareness about how our mind operates in topics like this, right? It's not a political statement. It is not an invitation to do anything. It's simply a video to make us aware of how our mind works in situations like this, and make us aware of the cost of operating this way. That's it. That's all it is. So we begin with the mechanism of projection versus ownership, and so that's probably one of the more important points to be made about this. See. There is this tendency of expressing righteous indignation when something "quote unquote" wrong is happening. It's a kind of it's a bit self-serving, right? It could be anything. It could be that we simply want to make ourselves feel better by taking this high moral standard. or maybe we want to communicate, I don't know, virtue signaling with the people with whom we're talking, or like-mindedness, whatever it is. The thinking mind believes that it can project things out there and get rid of them. So, in the case of Putin, or in the case of anyone you've ever felt hatred for, the thinking mind believes that it can do something along the lines of, I'm going to hereby create this ball of hatred, and now I'm going to toss it at you. Ha, right? And I've gotten rid of it, and now you have been hit by my mental hatred. That's what the thinking mind believes it can do. What is actually happening, though, is whatever you create in your mind stays in your mind, right? And therefore the wise view, as opposed to having a projection view of negative states and negative affects that you can create in your mind, the wise view has a view of ownership. The wise view of ownership understands that any state of mind that you create within you, whether you are projecting it or not, stays within you. There is no such thing as projecting a negative or positive state of mind. It's all just created within, and it stays within, right? So when you begin to understand that, then you would think to yourself, well, it feels a little bit wrong to love Putin, but I start to understand that there is an actual cost for hating at him, right? Maybe I simply want to feel compassion for the victims. Maybe I want to have a fairly rational view which disagrees with the course of action that he has taken, but that I can decouple those from feeling hatred or cultivating negativity inside me, because I can't create a ball of hatred inside and toss it at someone. There is no someone out there to whom I'm tossing it. It's all in my mind. I can't create hatred in my mind without having it stick to it. And so that's point number one. It is the idea that you can project things out there, as in project your negative state of mind and get rid of it, versus, and that's kind of the clever or smart view of the mind, versus the wise view, which owns every state of mind that it creates, and therefore understands the cost of creating negative states of mind towards things or people out there. So that's number one. The other one is this whole judgmental attitude, right? So the thinking mind, because it's a kind of a tool and a weapon, feels the need to label and judge and discriminate every single damn thing, right? Anything it comes across as goody or baddie. Now, whether it even notices something is already predetermined by what's called your reticular activation system, that which determines things that are important to you versus not. It's a very impoverished view of the world to operate that way, by the way, because a lot is filtered out. So the richness of your life is diminished from the get-go. But so the thinking mind has this belief that unless it has pronounced itself and given its damn opinion about something and said this is good or this is bad, that it is somehow missing out, right? It needs to pronounce itself. It needs to declare its position. In previous videos, we talked about this notion of positionality, right? Declaring yourself for or against. And we have heard statements of that kind in politics, right? At times where maybe oppression was very high. Somebody would say, well, if you are not denouncing the perpetrator and taking the side of the victim, then you are against the victim. You have taken the side of the oppressor, right? And it reminds me of a quote from Star Wars, of all movies, in which Qui-Gon Jinn, an accomplished Jedi, is going around with Anakin Skywalker, soon to become Darth Vader. And Anakin makes some kind of pronouncement some kind of black and white pronouncement of this kind. And Anakin says, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Meaning only a lazy and uncultivated mind goes all out and declares that a certain thing is either black or white, and finds reassurance and certainty in that pronouncement. A sophisticated mind, and an active and pliable and cultivated mind, is one that can deal with uncertainty and paradox, and doesn't feel the need, or at least doesn't succumb to the need, to make a pronouncement of good and bad. In the case of the example with Putin, you could understand a number of things. One of them being the fact that his actions don't take place in splendid isolation. There is a geopolitical game being played in which the West, and especially Europe, but certainly the US, have played also a very funny, let's call it funny role, right? So this is not just a lunatic, a genocidal lunatic taking action in splendid isolation. That's one element. So taking a broader views, suddenly you go like, it's not as black and white as I thought, or as I hope, or as black and white as my lazy mind hoped that it would be. The other one is taking a broader view across time. If you trace back far enough, you begin to understand how today's Putin came to be. And you notice, as with all of us, that he had no part in being born in a certain time, in a certain place, with a certain genetic makeup, surrounded by people of a certain mentality. You could almost argue that not a single action the man has ever taken, or any of us have ever taken, can be pinned down to us as the sole responsible for that action, but that as some yogic and Vedantic books state, everything causes everything, right? There's no one cause and effect relationship. Either nothing caused it or everything caused it, which is kind of saying the same thing, right? Now, we are very inclined, because of our view of morality and personal responsibility, to say he is responsible. But when you get down to sort of moral philosophy and the way things actually operate, there's no simple way of pinning responsibility down to a single individual or entity. Sam Harris has some very interesting books on the topic, and he states that according to our popular view of morality and justice, if we could throw earthquakes in jail, we would, right? Which is a way to say that we are all natural processes simply unfolding and doing what we do. So the wise view that doesn't feel the need to judge is to accept, right? To accept facts as they are. Now, there's a nuance to this, which is to say that accepting things doesn't mean liking them. There's a distinction between those two. In other words, you could come to full terms and full acceptance of the fact that Putin is taking certain actions without having to condone them or like them, right? But what we're trying to say here is that the opposite of accepting is to judge. And judging something negatively is not just disliking it, but it's a rejection of the fact that it's taking place. It's saying this is unacceptable, or this should not be happening. Whereas the wise view the view of awareness is one of saying this is already a fact. It's already happening. There's no point in creating friction against this reality by rejecting it for the fact that it's taking place. I'm going to accept it as a fact, and then also try not to take a positive or negative stance, but simply observe it for what it is. There's a certain quote in that book that I just showed, The Course in Miracles, which says, your job is not to judge. Who gave you the knowledge and the wisdom to call something good or bad, and to say that you have all the angles around the topic? Your job is to find a way to find harmony with whatever is going on. That's the task at hand. Of course, there's a price to pay, right? You can no longer feel all self-righteous and declare yourself for or against something. You are looking for a higher way of operating in this case. And the last one that I wanted to mention is on the smart side of the aisle, this need to try and feel that you are right. Yeah, so righteousness and feeling that you're really smart and you're really right. So um, all of us try to secure that feeling that we are navigating reality correctly, right? It's a very reassuring feeling to say, I got my stuff together and I know how things work. Now, because of the virtue of the way that our nervous system works, that it's an illusion. We can never possibly be right. There are as many angles by which to see things as there are beings that can perceive bits and pieces of reality around us, right? Now, there is such thing as being more correct and less correct, right? So, chances are you throw yourself out of a 10-story building. Well, gravity will will set you straight pretty quickly. However, we're talking here not so much about physical facts or things of that kind, but matters of morality or opinion, in which you will notice that the fuzzier and more complicated the topic is, the more people revert to beliefs and principles and emotionality, and try to take a stance around those. So emotions are a great gauge to notice whether you are trying to defend your sense of self and your egoic sense of rightness or righteousness, versus simply trying to find out how things work. So that if you feel, if you ever feel yourself getting into a heated discussion, you can bet that almost certainly you are trying to defend your sense of self, and that it feels attacked because one of its tenets of what's true is being challenged. The wise view is about love, right? So if you compare, trying to be right versus love, it would be almost along the lines of what does winning consist of in this game, right? Is it, if you take a relationship, for example, you may win every single argument in a relationship with a partner of yours. So you could win every battle, but you will lose the war because the vibe you will create is one of dominance, competition, and then things will break apart, right? So the harmony that comes with understanding that there's a higher game being played is sacrificed, because the thinking mind, as I said, is a tool and a weapon, and it does not understand harmony. The thinking mind is not aiming for that. And that this is probably the crux of this entire thing, is whether it is through projection or judgment or the need to be right. Those are all egoic attitudes that are aimed at winning a very small battle and a very small, narrow game. If you define the game in a broader perspective, then taking ownership on all your negativity, accepting facts for what they are, and trying to cultivate harmony and love is the broader game that we're trying to play. And to play that broader game, projection, judgment, and the need to be right need to be sacrificed. That's why the spiritual process is akin to putting yourself through a fiery crucible. That reminds me of, before we get all serious, this movie, The Edge of Tomorrow, where the guy goes like, battle is the great redeemer, the fiery crucible in which true heroes are forged, right? So the fiery crucible through which you are putting yourself when you engage in the spiritual process is to withhold from projecting, judging, and the need to be right. Not because these are not handy in the physical outer world in which we live. These are weapons that make sure that you win. But in the internal world in which you want to cultivate a broader sense of harmony and a well-being that your thinking mind cannot provide and will never provide, you need to sacrifice those tendencies in order to own, accept, and love, which are higher modes of operation. And therefore, the analogy with Putin, which of course is, seems to be a fairly done and dusted, open shut case of he deserves hatred, and using that analogy to challenge whether he deserves hatred, because you cannot project it outside, whether your job is to judge what the person is doing, and whether your simply engaging in your need to be right. A motorcycle teacher of mine says, yeah, there's the rules of the road, but there's no point in being right if you're dead right. Meaning, just don't stick to the book and lose sight of the greater game. So wisdom is understanding that a greater game is being played, certainly within, and understanding the opportunity cost and the real cost of simply going for a low-hanging fruit, and the nice gooey feeling that righteous indignation and judgment and projection give you. There is a cost to those, and there's it's, I think, handy to be aware of that mechanism so that we can see it at play in ourselves, and simply observe it without projecting, without judging, without whatever, simply becoming aware that that is taking place and understanding the opportunity cost. So I hope that gives you some food for thought, and I'll be back with more videos. Cheerio.